Again, welcome and looking forward to playing with you today. I also have a few of your questions near the back, questions from previous sessions, so we'll get to that also. Okay, let us screen share and go to what you have in front of you before I even share the slides. So what you have in front of you. You have this workbook, Find Your Next Job Now series. This is a session on connecting and relationships. After this session, these are the things that we're going to look at. You'll see this in the slides as well. Oh, let me share it a slightly different way. You don't need it so huge. So today we're going to look at the 3 skills, how to position who you are and sort of a ninja level approach to that, how to offer what the person may be interested in. And you'll see I left some blanks here. So I'm going to be speaking to those blanks so you can take notes in those blanks, and how to not look for a job while looking for a job. And then specifically your actions between today and next week. Near the back, almost like resources, you can see what we did in previous sessions, what we covered, and how to get more information, how to get on the mailing list. Are these sessions recorded? And if they are, where are they? So you can have that at the end. But let's get into today. So today is today, and today's on connecting in relationships. What else do I want to share with you before we fully get started? Just that I actually have this today, and I'm not really sure why. I'll stop sharing for a moment. I'm not sure why, so you may have this, and I just want to say how normal it is. So for example, if you've been with me in the past 2 weeks, you know I'm generally a high energy person. I just am. That's how I function. That's how I enjoy being. I'm going to remove this banner because we don't need it. I'm actually lower energy this week. I don't know why. I still have all this great content for you, but I feel a little lower energy. And please know that for anything we're doing, whether the job search or just things come ebb and flow, our energy ebbs and flows. So know that if you're feeling like a few things aren't hitting back to back, that's okay. I'm feeling like that today, even though I've been super focused on sleep and over 8 hours of sleep. That's been my personal focus for the past 5 days specifically. But we are who we are. We face what we face. Today is today, and what we can do with today, with what we have and the reserves we have. So just work on what you need, but just know it can be an ebb and flow. All right, let's play. So let me share with you what we're going to play with. And so today we're in session 3. We're talking about connecting and relationships. Now, we've touched on this a little bit, but I actually want to share with you how I really feel about connecting and relationships, and perhaps you feel a similar way. I feel like some of you may be rolling your eyes at me like, oh, Xenia, connecting in relationships. You've talked about this a little bit before, but I want to tell you this is not an eye-rolly aspect, the 3 specific things I'll be sharing with you today. But I do also want your advice. So if you have it and can share it with me in the comments, I would super appreciate it. What's a better term for connecting in relationships? So what it will effectively cover are these things: how to position who you are, how to offer to the person what the person may be interested in, how to not look for a job while looking for a job. So how to be very clear about what you're offering, but also know that you've got things going on in addition to the job search, even if the job search is 95% of your effort. What's a better term for connecting in relationships? I really dislike networking that has very clear connotations. So if you have a suggestion, I'm looking at you in the comments. So if you have a suggestion for me about a better thing to call this in the future, different from connecting in relationships, I will take all your advice right now. I want it. I will take your advice right now. Okay, so with connecting and relationships, but I want it. Yeah, it is ebbs and flows. Thanks for sharing that. It's so normal to get these auto rejections. And actually, just to your point about getting auto rejections, thank you for pointing that out. I was speaking with a colleague who's in a job search mode right now. I actually should have asked her about this connecting in relationships because she's in marketing and she's very wise on this. I don't know why I forgot to say that, but she was just mentioning that one way to avoid these auto rejections that come a week or 2 weeks after the interview is to, and while it might be it might feel a little risky in the moment, is to ask that fit and hesitations question. So near the end of your conversation, whether it's with the recruiter for screening or the hiring manager, any of the hiring manager's colleagues, near the end of the interview, now that we've spent some time together, could we talk a little about where you see the fit between me and this role and where you may have some hesitations? I have a whole section on this in a previous, so I won't go into it, but that's a way to, in a sense, avoid the auto rejection. But I'll also tell you, you've got to be that person that's okay with a yes or a no instead of a maybe. You may be at a phase where you actually want to sort of hear a maybe. I don't think you are. I think I've said this before. I think everybody at this session who comes here is a super high achieving person who's been at super high achieving companies. So I think you likely are all preferring a yes or a no. But one way to get to it is to ask that, and they may give you a hint of it so that you don't have to wait for an auto rejection. You decide what your taste is and how you'd like to handle it. So thank you for this. Marketing yourself, social collaboration. These are great thoughts. I like social collaboration. I don't know who you are. I can't see it in this format, but thank you. And somebody saying you're getting more interview hits with referrals through your friends and network. Exactly. And that's what we're part of what we're going to be talking about here. I know, I'm doing a lot of digressions because it goes with the questions that you're asking and comments you're putting in. I watch on YouTube the Zooglar Network posts, and the one from about 11 hours ago is on what to do in terms of networking in your LinkedIn profile and just what to highlight and lowlight. We're going to cover this also in a session, but one of the takeaways from there that I saw is really increase your number of connections, really start to connect with people that are like-minded, that are in similar fields, and that may show you sort of wider things than you have now. So something about getting more interview hits through a friend referral network. Oh my gosh, thank you. So one of you just posted that you've tried the fit questions for 2 interviews so far and it worked out well. Okay, awesome. So after today's session, these are the things you will know how to do. Big picture, this is my big picture image. Big picture, we are in week 3 of 9 weeks. You can see the content anytime on LinkedIn, so I won't go into it in detail. I'll just say that we're in the first stage, and I'll tell you what that thank you in red is for. We are in these first 3, we're in session 3. This is stage 1. So stage 1 is when you're not quite sure what the exact narrow direction of your search is. And stage 2 is action. So it's resume, it's preparing for interviews, it's speaking with people. Stage 3 is interview and closing. You have told me that about 20% are in stage 1 and 20% are in stage 3, and about 60% are in stage 2, so very active. Great. I'm going to still keep going on that assumption. One thing I wanted to say thank you. Next session, we're going to be doing real practice stories. So how do you tell a story about your experience? So it feels like, I hesitate to say this, but like an adventure story. So it feels active. So it's something, dare I say, that the person speaking with you will want to go back home to their spouse and say, oh my gosh, this is what I heard. So thank you to 2 people who have volunteered, and they'll be with me on video and we'll be talking about their stories. So that's next week. Okay. These are the stages. It's cyclical. It's like an ebb and flow. So we've talked about this before, but just know wherever you are, it could get better, it could get worse, and try to have as much equanimity about it as you can. I know that's easier to say than it is to do. So I'm with you here. All right, everybody has today's worksheet. If they don't, I think it's actually a workbook, then please ask for where it is in the comments and somebody, Leah or somebody else, will share it with you. Today's workbook. Okay, so with today's workbook, let's go to the first part, which is how to position who you are. So let me give you a contrast. When people ask me what I do, I can say I'm a chief people officer. I can say I help executives with their job search. I will submit to you that both of those are very boring. Or if you're in a different field, you might say I'm a product manager, I'm an engineer. It is very boring to hear I'm a chief people officer. It's super boring to hear I coach executives. That's something. Why is it boring? Because it's flat. It's almost like how are you good? There's no energy to it. You don't have energy when you say it. People don't really have energy when they're receiving it. So let's try a different way. What's the purpose? Why am I talking about how to position yourself? For 2 reasons. One is that you are going to be sending out contact requests. You will be reaching out to people on LinkedIn, through emails, to friends. And how do you position who you are? So let me propose a method that should work for anything. So imagine you're in yourself as I'm proposing this, and please follow along in the workbook where it's very, very clear. Again, if you don't have the workbook, just post. Thank you, Leah, you just posted it. Here's an example of what we can do instead. For these types of people, I do this, I help in this way to get these results by doing this, by doing A, B, C, and D. We start with for whom? Is it for technology companies? Is it for high growth, ultra scaling companies? Is it for pharma companies? Is it for the marketing departments of pharma companies? For whom do you do what you do? I do this, and then to get these results, by here are some actions. So if you are in the workbook, you will see, I'll actually take this slide off because we don't need it right now. If you're in the workbook, you will see the example that I have in there, which is, I'm posting my own example. And that's uh, for, again, I've described this, but for let me give you my example. For executives who don't know how to find their next CEO or C-suite role, I help them get a job with 20% more compensation and equity by doing a lot of things. And then I list a few things. It's weekly progress coaching. It's providing them a 360 so they can hear their strengths from former colleagues. It's providing them my bench of colleagues, so someone who'll help with resumes, with LinkedIn, with negotiations, with listening to their sorry stories as a second take after me, and that I'm a sounding board for their conversations and interviews. So I would submit that that's still not super exciting. It's still for somebody, but here's what it is. So I will say, let's go one further. Let's kind of ninja level this. And the huh, I did not ninja level this for you yet. So I did not. So this is great. In the specific workbook, which I will now share on the screen because I'm nothing if not flexible. In the specific workbook, here is the ninja level of the same thing that we just discussed. And when I say ninja level, I just mean kind of up leveling even what we just talked about. You know how something happens. Well, in those cases, I helped these and these kind of people to get this kind of result by doing this. So let me run the exact same example by you, just speaking to you. You know how when executives may be looking for a job, like a CEO of a large company, that exec is not going to find that job posting on LinkedIn. They're not going to find it on Indeed. So it's a hidden job market. So they really have to, plus they're doing it if they're at their company, they're doing it from a place, a little bit of stealth. And there's this emotional toll of, I've been with this company, but how do I even look for the next job? The whole job search process has changed. So they have a lot of pain points there. For those execs, I partner with them so that they can get their job faster and with higher compensation. There are a few things that I do. I offer them a 360. We have weekly progress meetings. I offer them my whole bench, so they've got somebody to help with resumes, LinkedIn profile, negotiations, and so on. But the reason that we work together is because they're in a situation that's just unpleasant for them. And they know how to do all this. My goodness, they've hired over 300 people just this year alone. But when it comes to them, how do they talk about themselves? What was different about that? Let me ask you, what was different about the you know how? So my format was, you know how it's hard for execs to find jobs. And I'm not doing a pity party for execs. I mean, everybody here is looking for a role. But I'm just saying, you know how they don't even have a job they can apply to online. What was different about that for you when you listened to that? What was different for you? You know how something. You know how something. It was a conversation. Yeah, it was. It was much more of a conversation because I'm already starting with, you know how? And it's very comfortable conversationally. It's very comfortable in person, online, especially when someone just quickly asks you, oh, what do you do? You know how companies try to really scale up a department, but they're missing that product manager who's already scaled? You know how companies sometimes really want to grow their marketing, but they're at a point where they can't afford to invest too much? You know how sometimes engineering products have to switch from waterfall to agile and they don't quite have the people who have both sets of skills? So those are all kinds of you know how. It flowed naturally, a few of you are saying. Yes. So this is a really good point. One of you says, I feel like I'd lose my audience if I said that to a person who's not a captive audience. So for anything that I say today on any other sessions, use your emotional IQ, just judge it, judge what the situation is. If you're in a Zoom room and there are 9 people and everyone's doing their introductions, please use the short version. But actually, let me show you how you could use the long version to your question right here. So everyone's going around and saying who they are. And I would usually say, I coach execs who are looking for their next play. They're at a company, but they're looking for their next play. So I would say, you know how executives sometimes are looking for their next role, but they just don't know how to find it? Well, I work with those execs. So, right, I don't do the whole thing. And I certainly don't do the buy unless I have a captive audience, buy these actions. I don't do that unless it's really someone who's interested. And I'll pause because it is a conversation. So I can say by doing a number of things, including getting a team together for them. I really love your question here because you're helping us wrestle with how to present this. What else? I'm just thinking if there's any other comment to that. You could still do it one thing I don't want people to walk away from here today and to be like these verbose self-introduction, and 3 years ago I did this, and I went to this college and so on. No, no, no. Like, please be as concise as the situation calls for. So do use your EQ and see if you can do this even in a short introduction. You know how companies need this. Well, that's when I come in. I'm a PM or I'm an engineer. Okay, somebody just said you've identified the problem that you're solving. Yes, I actually had never thought about it that way, but I really like what you're saying. You've identified the problem you're solving. I really like how you're phrasing that. Thank you. It helps people to visualize the outcome. Uh, what's a good way to do this if you're transitioning into a new industry? Let me give you more on this at the next session. I'll think about it, but off the cuff, if you're transitioning, so does the industry still have the same problem? For example, if you were in marketing in tech and you're moving into marketing in pharma, does the industry still have the same problem, whether it's growth that's too high for what it can handle budget-wise, marketing budget-wise, and you're somebody who can work with small marketing budgets for big impact? Does it have similar problems? That's how I would say it. So thank you for that question also. Wonderful. And one of you says you're creating an immediate connection. I totally agree as well. You are. Okay. We're gonna, what do you, so I have a challenge for you. I don't always have a challenge for you, but I do today. It's in the workbook, but I'm going to share it on the screen as well. I'm really glad to have a challenge for you because one of you asked me, hey, Senya, can you actually give us like homework or challenges? So here is your challenge, and I'll remind you at the end as well. My challenge for you is to update your LinkedIn profile with this format. You can do that in the About section. It might feel weird to say you know how conversationally in your About section, so I'm dropping that for the LinkedIn profile About section. But you could do all of those examples that we've just said. Anything that I'm talking about, I actually really invite you to send me. You can send me a DM right now on LinkedIn. You can put it into the chat as well. But let me know how you're using it. So what are you doing? I've given this example of moving from tech to pharma, but for high growth companies that really need someone who specializes in this and this, I do this. That I feel like is something you could put on your LinkedIn about. So in addition to the jobs, you can post the very conversational part at the top so people really get it right away. They get for what kinds of companies. I know a question that you're about to ask me, which is, Senya, am I narrowing myself too much? So if I say for high growth companies, and I actually get a company that's been around for 30 years, a mature industry, mature company, am I kicking myself out of that opportunity? No, and I'll tell you why no. This is across the board. So whether this is in job search or another kind of thought leadership or presenting yourself, when you present a niche, people will jump to extrapolate how that niche can fit them if they're not in your niche. Don't worry about being too narrow because that narrow is what you're looking for. And if somebody wants you with what you've said, then they want you. Whereas, I mean, just listen to the opposite side. For tech companies, I do great product management. You and I both, oh, great. Okay, great. But for specifics in these situations, companies in this situation, you could describe something that's actually happened with you. This is my challenge to you. All right, let's keep playing. Cuts past the jargon and title confusion. Yes, I think it does. Yeah, thanks for saying so. Okay. Next section, we're going on. We're at a good time for going on. We're going on to the next part. So just keep going through your workbook. And if anybody wants to know where the workbook is and joined us late, just drop that into the chat and somebody will give you the workbook link. How to offer what the person may be interested in. Why am I sharing this with you? Because we've done previously, and you can refer to it in previous sections, how do you write that email to somebody? I'm a little bit going to do an aside and jump to something that's pretty important. So one of you asked me, and I want to make sure we get it before people leave here. So somebody said, well, this is the question. When reaching out for a connection, what are some ways to keep your message concise? Because connection requests are limited to 300. Oh, where's the workbook? Could somebody please tell that person where the workbook is? Thank you. A connection requests only allow 300. So you may like this answer, you may not. I super do not recommend that you connect with a person with a, hey, I'm very interested in what you do. Could we connect? Could we talk? Here's a little bit about me. I super do not recommend that you do that in a connection request. A connection request is viewed completely differently from a message. So first of all, this is just kind of the stakes of the game. I Almost everybody in the job search will need to upgrade to the LinkedIn Premium so that you can send messages to people. A lot of people like me, they just have open messages, so you can send it anyway. But a lot of people don't, and you need to send that message that has more characters. Not because you need more than 300 characters, but because of people's mindset when they read it. When people read it just feels personal to other people, so I'm not sharing mine on LinkedIn. But if you go to people who have reached out to you, you don't even quite see that people have a value or they want to share something with you. So please, if you're trying to connect with somebody, first of all, try to connect with them on email. There are lots of ways to connect by email. In fact, I'll post specifically about that, how to find somebody's emails. Lots of great ways online. But please try to connect with them on email at their work email. Secondly, if you're connecting with them on LinkedIn, do not do it through connection. Connect with a description. Do not do it that way. Send them a message. Later, you can connect. Why? Because they're in a different mindset. So I'm looking at I know I'm repeating myself, but I just want to be really clear. When you're looking at who your connection requests are, you may not even read the text. And a little bit, the more senior you are, the less you'll read the text and you'll just sort of think, do I know that person or do I not? So you're reaching out to that person with a message. First choice is email. Second choice is LinkedIn message. All right, so let's go back to where we were. Where we are is right here. How to offer what the person may be interested in. So here are your good data points on what people are interested in. First of all, what they post. Not everybody posts. A lot of people are so heads down in their own work, they just don't post. But every once in a while, they post or they comment on someone else's post. Huge if you have it. If you don't, you've got to move on to the next bullet point. What their job description is. So the way someone describes their job definitely includes what they prioritize and what they value. So you can cull through that. Not even keywords, because you're in their industry generally. Even if you're switching industries, you're in engineering like they are, you're in product like they are. Look at their job description. It gives you some ideas of what's valuable to them. Then click on their company that they're at. What's being said about their company in the news? Google that, find it out. So these are all different ways that you can connect. This is on top of the very close connection that you're going to try to do, which is if you know someone in common, ask that person first, of course. If you went to the same school, if you worked at the same company, we talked about that before. But where can you get data on what's interesting to them? And now that you have this data, and gosh, it's wonderful if they post things on LinkedIn. If you have this, here are the things that you can write to them directly. You can say, by the way, I'd be happy to share with you the trends that I've been seeing in whatever your area is. You can also write something a little more detailed, which then obviously lets them know that you've explored information about them, which makes it feel much more personal. This is not just one of 100 emails that Senya's sending out. Senya sent me an email. I saw you posted about this. Had you heard about this other thing? Could be an HBR article, could be something you posted. I know we're just meeting here. You're kind of acknowledging the little bit of the awkwardness of the situation. You're just connecting with them for the first time. You're just sending them a message for the first time. I'm editing my own words because you're not connecting with them. You're actually sending them a message. I know we're just meeting here. If valuable for you, I'd be happy to jump on a 15-minute call to share a couple of stories in this area. If this feels markety or salesy, then change it. So change it to what fits for you. This could read the last part about share a couple of stories in this area that could read as, oh, I have something I want to sell to you. That's not the point. So if you have stories in how this turns to this or what to do in this such situation, then that's what you're offering. So this is my wording. Fit it to your wording that's specific to something they just posted or you saw in their job description or you saw in the company news. I'm going to pause before we go on to the next section, just to see where are you? What are you thinking? What's your thought process? Oh, I love hearing this. One of you posted, I'm holding off on my free month of LinkedIn Premium until my pre-job search holiday is done. I love that you posted this. And what this says to me is that we have talked previously in these sessions. I super recommend that when you're ready is when you job search. Before you're ready, just, hey, give yourself the sort of weight off your shoulders that you're exploring, that you're looking, that you're actually taking a few days off the job search. So you're referencing something we've talked about before. Some jobs have the hiring manager listed. Is it okay to reach out to them directly, expressing interest in the job? Yes, yes, in a kind, thoughtful way with a message, not an open to connection, not a connect thing, but an actual message. Yes, and make yours very concise and very different. One model that I really love, and it's actually the model that I used in workbook 2, is this. It's called Smart Brevity. You can look it up, but it's basically 3 different sections, which is what's the one big idea? Why does this matter? And here are the details. So your one big idea, you literally can write one big idea. I'm applying to this role and I reached out to you because I loved your background in this and this. Again, personal to them. Uh, and you could say something that's specific about this role. I'm an ideal candidate for A and B parts of this role, but not parts B and C. I feel like I'm not saying this very fluidly. Let me back up a little bit. If you write a personal message to the hiring manager, which I think is great, make it very concise because they're busy, and make it very specific to them and to you. Huge fan when the hiring manager is listed, because if they don't want to, they won't reply. But if there's something that's intriguing, they will send your resume to the recruiter who will call you. They have much more clout than applying through online. Oh, excellent. Another one of you answered the same question, which is, as a recruiter, this person is saying, as a recruiter, the reason why some companies show the hiring manager is to help with the engagement of possible candidates. So yes, in capital letters, yes, please reach out. What value do you bring? You asked the question here, what value do you bring? I don't know what you're referencing about what value do you bring. Oh, I agree with you. I think what you're saying is, in that very concise message to the hiring manager, what value would you bring? So about them and about you, and where's that overlap that you see? Excellent. Totally top notch. Completely agree. So to back up, we've talked a little bit about how you can position yourself, and I gave you a challenge. I don't know if you can tell, I am just a little bit lower energy, but I love this, and I love speaking with you, and I love that you're coming through here with lots of comments, and I'm really excited to share the next piece with you. So, and what value do you bring? Okay, here we go. Next part. I know this is going to be a little controversial, so I'll preface that before I show a slide. This is going to sound weird, but I encourage you to explore this and see if it resonates with you and to what degree it resonates with you. This is what I'm talking about. How to not look for a job while looking for a job. The time is going to go by anyway. So it used to be that it took 5 to 6 months for executives to find a job. I don't know in this job market. This job market is, everybody's waving their hands. I don't know in this job market. So let's assume what's the shortest time for you to find your role, your next role, and the longest time. At that same time, let's even say you're 95% focused on looking for a job, but that time is going to go by anyway. Let's say it's 3 months, or let's say it's 7 months. Who knows? Let's say it's 3 months. What else can you do in that time so that you're adding lines to your resume? You're increasing things that you're learning about. You're kind of growing as a person and in your work. That could mean that you start to volunteer with some groups for whom this is helpful. That could be that you take on a consulting assignment. Now, I realize what I'm saying is going to be really far off for somebody who doesn't have a job as of last week. You might be saying, like, Senya, what are you talking about? I want to find a job. I know you want to find a job, and I want to work with you and help you in finding a job. In addition to finding a job, what can you be doing in this time? You can learn. One of you is saying you can learn. Yes. So with this framing of what else can I do, I'm going to offer you some specific things that you can try. So, and I do know this is kind of just weird. Like what I'm offering is a little bit weird, but I'd still like to see what this does for you, how this can. I'll give you an example. I was speaking with a colleague yesterday, and my colleague said, I am certainly looking for a job. That's a huge priority. But she also said, I have a consulting project right now. And so that's actually really energizing me. It's really filling my bucket in a sense. She didn't use those words, but I'm contributing the things that I'm an expert at contributing while I'm doing this other thing, which, as some of you have pointed out in the chat, where you are getting constant auto rejections. You are. That's just the process. That's the way this process is. So, in the context of exploring what really matters for you, here are the 2 big questions I want to ask you. What would you do if you had some time? You have some time right now. Even if you are 95% focused on the job search, what would you do if you had some time? What would you explore? Where would you help to contribute? whose friend's startup might you help to consult that? And this question that I asked my dad, and it stuck. So during the pandemic, I don't know if any of you did this, but I and my parents were in a very small group for some number of weeks where we talked about some meaningful questions. It was actually very beautiful and deep, and it didn't last very long, but we met, I think, weekly at the time, and everybody had different questions that they brought. So one week, it was my week to ask a question. And for some reason, I was just intrigued by, what do you want to have happen in 5 years? So now it's the pandemic, everything's upside down. What do you want to have happen in 5 years? And my dad answered it in just a great way. No, so my dad's retired. He used to be a quant on Wall Street, a portfolio manager, a trader, and then he retired and started writing children's books, which I love and super encourage him to do. But when he looked at the question, he said, "Actually, I want to learn quantum physics." Well, I never knew you wanted to learn that. But his thinking was, if he was thinking about learning quantum physics in the next month, that's not really going to move very far, or quantum physics over the next 2 months. But if you think about it as a 5-year horizon, you sort of think, I could get a lot of material here. I could actually build up some knowledge. So the same thing for you. And I'm not, oh my gosh, I'm not saying you have 5 years. I'm definitely not saying that. But what I'm saying is, if you had something to play with, if you had some time, and if you had some things that you could put into that time, so that at the end, first you would learn, as one of you just said, but second, you may even add to the lines in your resume. You may not, but you may find that you're adding to the lines in the resume. So I'm going to pause for a moment. You have the workbook in front of you. How could you fill in right there? How could you enjoy growing something in your own life in this time? So I'm just going to give you a moment to brainstorm a little bit. I'll be right here. What would you want to grow? Just a few snippets of ideas. Okay, and I'll share what two of you are saying. Thank you for this feedback, because I really know this is a little bit controversial. So one of you says, this is good advice. I've been unemployed for 8 months and wish I had done this right away, because now I feel like it's too late because I need a job. No, to you who wrote this, I posted recently about this, and I kind of hesitated to post this because it's such a cliche phrase, but you know the story. The best time to plant the tree is 30 years ago. The second best time to plant the tree is today. So please go after this session today. It's 12:39 p.m. on Thursday, March 2nd. After this session, go for a short walk or just sit down at your desk. What's the tree you want to plant if you were to plant it today? No, it's not too late. It's not too late. You're still focused on your job search. You do need a job. That's still going on. And another of you just wrote, I agree, because I find that sometimes the harder I look, the less I find. Oh my gosh. So there's research. As you may know, I have a PhD in organizational behavior from Stanford, did a lot of research, but there's a Jennifer Acker at the GSB, at the Stanford GSB, often says that looking for happiness is like trying to find the eyeglasses that are on the top of your head. So you cannot find happiness. She's done a lot of research on this. You can't find happiness as well if you are, where is it? Like just live in a sense. So to this person who says, the harder I look, the less I find. And this person says the other day they joined a Slack group to learn and contribute, as well as possibly finding new connections and leads. Oh my gosh, there are groups in all of our industries. For example, I'm in 2 groups for chief people officers. 2. Who knew there were 2? And it's great. There are advice sections. There are people brainstorming similar comments. And you also say a random conversation led to an unsolicited referral and an interview for an unadvertised job. Woohoo! Yes. Woohoo! That's really, really great. That's really great. Another says quantum physics is intriguing. Great. You could have another startup idea. You could study computer science. You could take on a construction manager gig, as this person did, and lead a strategic plan. So explore. Just this is, sorry, I shook the screen. This is an invitation to explore. Now I'll share one more thing on this topic before we go to kind of an ending, and then some questions that you've asked me. One person said, and thank you, I've seen you here in past chats before, says, I've been recruiting for many years, and now that I'm unemployed, I decided to expand my understanding into more of an HR function and have signed up for a 10-week prep in the HR field. Awesome. Oh my gosh, you are like even learning ASL. Wonderful. Who knows when this could be helpful? Are you all familiar with the Steve Jobs speech, "Stay hungry, stay foolish"? Um, look that up if you aren't. I think we all are. But his whole point there is that you can only review what you've done looking backwards. He says if I hadn't taken at Rice, if he hadn't taken calligraphy, he would not have thought to make the Apple and the Mac just care about fonts or care about what things look like. So you never know. You never know where things lead. Great. Someone saying that they'd like to sell something online, someone saying that they'd like to study for something. So consult, like kind of think of yourself. I didn't put this into the notes, but what you're writing makes me think of it. Think of yourself as a consultant in this time. You're an expert in some areas, you're a consultant. And you're also job seeking. I'm not narrowing, I'm not poo-pooing that in the least. I'm not downplaying it. You're still job seeking. Uh, Great. Yes, connecting the dots. Okay, so next section that I want to show you is, let me share screen. Okay, so we are in this section, which is the how to not look for a job. The time is going to go by anyway. You're an expert. You're an expert in product. You're an expert in engineering. You're an expert in what? And then you might have the stories. Well, Senya, okay, so let's say what are the practical steps, Senya? If I had this time, I'm going to do this. What should I do? So one very simple thing that you could start to do is to post stories. Post stories on LinkedIn. And really, I mean stories. I don't mean, hey, this is a how-to of what, I'll just use my field. This is a how-to of how to do good recruiting when you're internal at a company. That's not exciting for me to write. That's not really exciting for someone to read. This is a story of how a candidate who was a referral got our attention, and we moved forward with this candidate at in record speed. Why? Because of this, this, and this. This is a story. What else could I share from my? Oh, this is a story of how we needed to stand up a department's learning. So the actual department really needed to train and learn its internal managers. We stood that up by doing this, this, and this. But it looked like we had these obstacles and like it wouldn't actually work, but we did. So just stories is certainly your sorry stories, which we're going to be talking about next time: situation, action, result, interesting thing. You can post some of those in terms of, hey, this was a conundrum or a little bit of a puzzle. Here are some things I did. Have you seen similar things? So you're sharing, don't think of it as broadcasting, because a lot of people say to me, Senya, I've never posted on LinkedIn. I've had a job for 12 years. Why would I post on LinkedIn stories or anything? But feel about it like you're connecting with people. And so it's not broadcasting, it's actually a two-way conversation, because once people reply or post in the comment or even like, you can go off and have a separate conversation with them. Oh, you also had that situation, or you think this, or you disagree. Great, let's chat about it. You could do writing sorry stories, but just make them conversational, not braggy, because part of a sorry story and star story is you're bragging about yourself, but really like, here's a conundrum or here's a puzzle. Here's some things I did. So if you're saying, what can I do? Start posting stories. Also start exploring where you might actually do some hands-on things at the same time that you're job searching. Can you consult somewhere? Can you consult somewhere? Even, I know this is weird because a lot of you are pretty senior in your careers, but at the same time, where do you want to grow? Do you want to consult somewhere? Okay, and then I'm sharing this here because you have it literally in the workbook and you don't have it on my slides. These are about 4 or 5 links from people that I follow on LinkedIn, and they specifically suggest what you should do when you're starting to explore that, how to not look for a job when looking for a job. A lot of this is how to play by play create a side hustle. I'm not saying you need to charge for anything. You may end up doing that, but I'm saying this is specifically what they suggest you do. So go into this, explore it. They're really specific details. I love Gary Vaynerchuk's advice here, but you'll see it. So if you click here, you'll see it goes to just directly to that site, to that section, and what he says there. Okay. You can't see when I click on it. Okay, great. So if you were to click on it, you would see that. Any comments or questions right now before I go into the next part? This is great. We're just 15 minutes from the end, and I'm getting closer to us coming to a conclusion for today. So let me know if comments, questions, and I will share our audience window. That's what it's called in Canva. What is your one takeaway so far before we get to some of your questions from last time? What is your one takeaway on any of these topics? I'll put the topics back up so you have them in front of you. Your takeaway on these topics: how to position who you are, how to offer what the person may be interested in, How to not look for a job while looking for a job. So a part of your life where you can get constant reinforcement on the thing that you're amazing at, what you're expert at, whether it's posting about it or you're actually interacting with people about it. So what is your one takeaway? So I will post here one takeaway so I can see where your one takeaway starts. Okay, let's see. One takeaway. What is your one takeaway? Use of epic stories in describing oneself. I like your term there, epic stories. I hadn't thought about it as epic stories, but yes, the whole like how for people that do this, this is what I do, these are the results I get. Telling my successes as a story doesn't sound as much like bragging. Thank you for sharing that. I also hadn't thought about that, but that I would say that's true. And it sounds memorable when you share anything as a story, including your successes. You're going to love using for these people. I get to do this. I help by doing this to get these results by doing this. Awesome. Okay, so one of you is saying, look at daily activity from a long-term perspective. From what would the 5 years from now me want to be doing today? For that person who wrote about 8 months ago, plant your tree, plant your tree. Okay, that's a takeaway. Let me take a couple more takeaways. They might be the same, they might be different, but just to see. Exploring what else you can do, not looking for a job. I want to give credit to where credit's due. I was brainstorming ideas with my dad. You'll see my dad and my mom come into my stories a lot. My dad came up with that phrase. And he really feels it's true too, to not do something when you're doing something, not look for a job when you're looking for a job. Explore what else you can do. Okay, so let me then share with you a couple more things. Oh gosh, you just posted this. I love this. This really was a game changer for me when I started using this in business and even at networking events or sort of fun events a while ago. The idea behind you know how. So you know how this happens, or you know when this situation happens. It's so true because then people just they get it. They do know how. They've been in those situations or others have been in those situations, and it's a reminder to stay conversational. Yep, and that person can relate to what you're saying. That I mentioned contacting people by email versus LinkedIn. No, it would be fine to contact via email. Like people expect to be contacted either via email or LinkedIn. So email, you're just more likely to get them. So we are all on LinkedIn. We are meeting here on LinkedIn, but other people they may check their LinkedIn every 3 days, every 5 days. Even so, here's a situation I've seen some of you all get into, which is you've written a note to someone on LinkedIn through LinkedIn. They write back and they say, "Oh yeah, that would be interesting. Sure, let's set up a time." You write back, here are some options for times, or please tell me when you're available, and you don't hear back. So total crickets. It's just because those folks are busy. And when you're connecting with their email, it's just a little bit easier because they see it more regularly. Now, my advice is still to follow up on that. They've already said they do want to meet with you. But this whole this email versus LinkedIn, I'd say go with email first, then LinkedIn. And sometimes you just can't find the email. Two more takeaways are thinking about where I could volunteer with my expertise. Please do. And message me, like tell me how that's working or tell me what you're playing out with that. Uh, oh, wow. Oh my gosh. So this person actually says that when they volunteered with their expertise previously in previous times, it led to a previous full-time opportunity. Great. I wasn't even thinking that. But what you're saying also makes me think of something else. We are in such a weird time. We're in a time where we're past a pandemic. There's a war. All of these layoffs. We're just in such. This is called lots of different things. VUCA. It's called a poly crisis. Like, this is a weird time. What if in the future it's actually? Hear me out. A little bit weird idea. What if in the future it's actually not so specifically that everybody gets a job, but people get contracts, they get gigs, or you're brought in for a specific thing, or you actually are an expert in something and you're kind of curating a company along with you. We don't know what the world is going to look like. So let's keep doing what we do in addition to searching for the next full-time permanent thing that we're looking for. Thank you for sparking that idea in my head again. The ninja level exercise is helpful thinking about what I can offer as a value add. You know how, or you know when. Yes, thanks for that. Okay, let me go to our nearly end of our section here. I'm going to miss you guys until next week. Okay, so let's go near the end. And we are here. You've given me your one takeaway. I'm giving you homework. I'm actually giving you homework. So thank you to you who told me that you all want a little bit of homework. You don't have to think about it as homework. You can think about it as optional, but here it is. It's the next slide. Here are the things that I'm asking you to explore and take on. It is also in your workbook. Sleep, movement, nutrition, action, and connection. What do I mean by these? In this order, I'm telling you, in this order. So many times I've posted about this, I've talked to some of you about this. When we are out of a routine, when we're actually in a situation where things are a little bit different, we're not in that same, oh, we're going to work, we're rushing to work, we may tend to drop things like drop sleep and drop movement and exercise. We just may think, oh, we'll get to that tomorrow, we'll get to that tomorrow. So please, if you're prioritizing everything, and I say this to you, I say this to me, start with sleep. Start with, we need 8 hours. You may not be getting 8 hours. I wasn't always getting 8 hours. I'm focused on that right now. Sleep, then move to whatever movement means for you. Could mean going for a walk. Could mean walking to the stop sign outside your house. Could mean going to the gym, going to Orange Theory. It could mean doing dance online. It could mean anything, yoga, anything you want. Something with a friend, then you hit movement and connection at the same time. Item 3, nutrition. What does that mean? Watch your water intake, make some choices on nutrition that you want to. You know what to do. We all know what to do. But what I'm saying is focus on sleep, movement, nutrition, and then action. So what I mean by action is actually something very specific here. I mean that one challenge that I gave you, which is look at your LinkedIn profile, look at that first skill that we talked about today, which is how to present yourself, and do it. Just put it in your about section. I know your about section is probably from earlier, from your previous job. So put it in there, put it right at the top. It's conversational. People can relate to you. That's the challenge action. And then the connection is we are all a group of alone action and social action. Sometimes we just need to be on our own. We need to explore things, look things up, figure things out. And sometimes we actually just need to walk with someone else or get coffee with someone else or have a Zoom. So think about someone that comes to mind, someone you want to reach out to. I had started and used to be the CEO of a coaching group for about 8 years called Silicon Valley Change Executive Coaching before I went to become a chief people officer internally in-house. The thing we always end our session on, a coaching session, you're getting this totally for free, is what is your action? And that's like the action 4 here. What is your career action, your work action? What is your health action? So that would include items 1 through 3 here, sleep, movement, nutrition. And what is your connection action? And that's actually an invitation by the current CEO of Silicon Valley Change, Eileen Schaefer. It's such a, just think of who should you reach out to? Is it your mom? Is it your brother? Is it a friend? Is it someone from school? Is it someone who is out of a job? Who should you connect with? And then put that on your calendar. Send a text. It's maybe a phone call, but what if you can even meet in person? And maybe you can't, maybe it's not geographically, but that's connection. So you actually have optional homework, a little bit like Mission Impossible. Should you choose to take this on, these are your things: sleep, movement, nutrition, action, and connection. Coffee, a walk, a Zoom, whatever it is. And let's go into our last few sections here. We did the first 3. So we have gone through stage 1 with interspersing some stage 2s. Now we're doing all stage 2 in the next 3 sessions. The next session is probably literally the most impactful one on the whole job search process. It's interviewing, and it's telling your situation, action, result, interesting thing story. Again, huge thank you to the volunteers who are going to come on with us. So I won't go through the other details, but next time is going to be interviewing. You can take off now, or you can stay for a couple of minutes while I answer 2 questions that came up last time. So either see you next week, or I'll go on to the couple of questions. So a question that we had is, we talked about this one. Here's a question that we had. What do you do if what do you do if in the conversation you don't know how to address the obstacles people note? So this had to do with the fit and hesitation question. And if I'm interviewing with you, I would ask you, oh, now that we've spent some time together, where do you see that this could be a fit between my background and this role? And in a moment, I'll ask you what your hesitations are. Suppose they say, Senya, you're not detailed enough. So actually, suppose they say, Senya, we don't know if you're detailed enough for this role. Suppose I don't know how to address this obstacle. So first of all, I will just tell you, whoever asked this question, you do know. You actually do know. You are a business professional. You've been in business a long time. You have a gut feel of how to address with an example, just even one example. Thank you so much for bringing that up. Can I share a story that might be a little bit different from what you're saying? So you, first of all, you do know, but set that aside. Let's say it's detail oriented and you don't really have detail oriented examples. Take that as input. So you can say, I can see, be responsive. I can see why you might think that. Or they might even say they're not as detail oriented as two of my other candidates. And so we probably won't be moving forward. So first of all, you've just gotten some information. But second of all, take that. Take that and think about, in this time that you're job searching, how could you become more detail oriented? And I'm using such a boring example, I'm sorry, but first thing that came to mind, how could I become more detail oriented? Can I take some courses on this? Can I work with a startup and help them in this way? And then put that on my resume. So take this as feedback if you really don't have the answer, but I think you likely do, but I don't want to push it because maybe you don't. And here's the last question that I'll touch on today. How exactly do you apply this consulting mindset? So remember, we talked about how you're a consultant, you're paid a lot of money, you're there, you're co-problem solving with the other person. How exactly do you apply this mindset if you have to pass a recruiter call in order to get to the hiring manager interview? It appears this mindset applies much more to the hiring manager interview. Touche, you're completely right. Let's talk about the recruiter. You are right. The consultant and that we're problem solving together very much applies to the hiring manager or anyone who would be on that team or related to that team. You can use this approach with a recruiter. The most important thing that's going to happen with a recruiter, and I can tell you this because when recruiters have interviewed candidates for me and then they've sent me their assessment, so they send me I usually want, let's say I want 3 things checked out: how their work in this area, their work in that area, and their work in a third area. And I want to check an example of when they've managed a big team. So let's say those are the 4 things I've told my recruiter to ask about in a screening interview. The recruiter sends me a summary for every candidate that he's interviewed. And at the very end is the recruiter's assessment. And when I read what the recruiter has sent me about a job candidate, which happens within an hour of the recruiter speaking with the candidate, they type really fast, they send it to me really fast. When I read that, when I get this email, the place that I go to right away is, what is the recruiter's assessment of the candidate? What does that mean? That means that you engage together. If possible, you laugh together. It was conversational. It was pleasant. It was, you maybe made fun of yourself in this situation, but also showed your competence at the same time. That's what comes across. And it's literally the first thing I go to. Because if the recruiter says, hey, this person may not work out for this and this reason, this is my assessment, I want to hear that. I still will look at the other things, but I want to hear that. And if the recruiter says, oh my gosh, phenomenal energy, if the other things work out for you, Senya, we should definitely move this person to the next round, I pay attention to that. So what does this mean for you? There's a book that came out a couple of years ago by Jennifer Ocker and her colleague. I'm sorry, I don't have her name tip of my head. The book is Humor Seriously, Humor, Seriously. And it's not about being a stand-up comedian. It's about interjecting levity and enjoyment into your conversation. So the biggest thing I can tell you with that recruiter screening is enjoy. Like, if you're enjoying it, they're enjoying it. So make it conversational, enjoyable, fun, because that will get conveyed to the hiring manager. I very much enjoyed our time together. I salute you. See you next week, and all the best. Try your Mission Impossible homework actions. Try them. See how they go. See you next time.